one of the earliest lockdowns, recorded lockdowns in the Indian civilization is about the Govardhanagiri episode. This is what we're showing here. And this is a famous painting of Govardhanagiri. And the one on the top here is about what you have in the Brajbhumi. And here, the one on the bottom is at Mahapalipuram, Mamallapuram. So actually, the lockdown for the whole Brajbhumi was for 7 days. They had to take shelter here, and it was a 7-day lockdown, recorded in history about 5,100 years back.
Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. We today have the very likable couple of Hema Hari and DK Hari to join us regarding their new book called Staying Alive. Hema and DK Hari, welcome to P Guru's channel. Thank you so much. So today's topic is something that used to really haunt us, at least for me when I was growing up, because there was this song called Staying Alive, VG's song, and Saturday Night Fever, Boogie Nights, what have you. But the
John Travolta,
right. Right. The topic is staying alive, but this is something different. I think they have a very different take on this. So you will hear a very fascinating conversation. In fact, it's a presentation and more questions from our side. So I think I'll hand over the control to Hema and DK Hari. Over to you.
Thank you, Sri Iyer. It's a pleasure for us to be on P Guru's channel once again. And the topic of the season is about staying alive. How we all need to sort of overcome this pandemic, this particular hurdle, and then go forward in life. So I'm actually thought to be the ideal subject that we could speak, that we could use the name for this topic of staying alive. So for this event that's happening in the world, this epidemic, we thought we'll come up with a specific book, and it'll be called Staying Alive. And this is the book cover, and you can see the world. And this particular classic pose of John Travolta is what we have brought up. On the subject of staying alive, see this particular situation that we have, this pandemic, we have 3 perspectives to it. One is to prevent it, very important from happening, and then when now it's already happened, the perspective is to contain it and badly cure it. So this is one angle. Same time, this affects probably a small percentage of the population in single digits, hopefully. At the same time, the balance, large population, how do they stay alive is the question that comes up. This is not so only to this particular pandemic, but it's so for every hurdle that the civilization faces, the world faces. So let's look at what we have in this. There is a balance that's needed in perspectives. And this balance comes from a twinning perspective. And the best example for such a twinning perspective is the Ashwini twins that we have in Ayurveda, in our Indian legends. What we call as ATB, Ashwini twinning balance. And in Ayurveda, these two people, twins, Ashwini twins as they call, they strike a balance.
They're actually the divinity for Ayurveda, for health itself. And fundamentally, if you see staying alive, how has a civilization, such a long-standing civilization such as India, been staying alive for so many millennia, if you see, then there are fundamental secrets to it. That is the act of striking balances. We never go towards extremes, but we know when to strike a balance between two ideas, 2 thoughts, 2 kinds of approaches. And this has been denoted by Ashwini twins, not just for health, but for the way to approach life itself. And, the balance, the word balance is sama in Indian thought. And we shall see how they have been bringing about the mindset in Indians to look at things with a balanced view.
And for this, we need to understand what is the definition for the Ashwini twins. It is Hita Ahara, Mita Ayasa, Mita Ahara, Hita Ayasa, meaning affordable food, appropriate exercise. Affordable exercise, appropriate food. It's a balance between these two. One between food intake and activities that we do, not necessarily exercises alone, but activities as a whole. So that is what it is. So it's a balance between diet and lifestyle, balance between rest and work, balance between nourishment and treatment, and balance between prevention and cure. So it's a very intricate balance. It's a life balance, not just for an individual, but more so for a family and for a civilization as a whole. And in this particular balance, let's look at the, as far as India is concerned or any other land is concerned, the methods of treatment that we have. One in India is obviously Ayurveda on one hand and allopathy on the other hand. But if you look at Ayurveda, the focus of Ayurveda is very clear. It's two components to Ayurveda here. One is prevention, that is Swasthavrata, and cure of treatment of disease, that is Aturavrata. And if you see, Ayurveda is clearly focused more towards prevention, that is Swasthavrata. So they look
The
after
trust has been more on
prevention, and the cure component is a lot less. Of course, Ayurveda has got excellent cures, but the focus of Ayurveda is more towards prevention than cure. You can roughly say an 80-20 ratio. Whereas if you look at allopathy, the modern medicine, what do you call English medicine, modern medicine, it's the other way around. The focus is more towards treatment as opposed to prevention. So it's a balance. In today's life, it's a balance of how you use between Swasthavrata and Aturavrata, prevention and cure. So the prevention component now takes a much higher need. Cure is only when it afflicted. And for the Swasthavrata, if you look at it, it's a wonderful example that we have in the primary physician of Ayurveda, who is Charaka. Charaka is not one single individual, but it is a group of doctors who travel. That's why his name is so nicely given as Charaka, Chalna, Charati, to walk. So these are traveling physicians who go from village to village, town to town, all across the land, from Afghanistan in the northwest to Burma in the northeast to Kanyakumari and Sri Lanka in the south. So they go traveling all over and educating people and giving them good tips for health, for Swasthavrata, as well as treatment in the form of Aturavrata. So food habits, hygiene habits, and overall health well-being. This was what kept the civilization healthy for not just a few centuries, but many millennia here. And if you look at this, very interestingly, the painting of Charaka that we have is by a famous Russian painter by name Rorik. This particular painter, Rorik, this painting is now housed in the Banaras Hindu University Bharat Kala Kendra Museum. That's a museum inside the Banaras Hindu University. So that is there. So look at this. So it's a wonderful painting. A Russian has visualized how a Charaka looks and then he's painted it. And incidentally, in Bangalore, this Rorik finally settled down in Bangalore about 60, 70 years back, and then he married the Indian female lead superstar of those days, Devika Rani, and they lived in Bangalore, the outskirts of Bangalore. So they lived. So that's one side of the story. But look at the word for illness, it's called roga, rogi.
And health is arogya.
Arogya. That
which is freedom from disease.
Freedom from disease, illness. So, and in English, you have a saying, health is wealth. Whereas in Indian thought, it takes it a far higher level. It says, Arogyam Mahabhagyam. So, Bhagyam is not just wealth, Bhagyam is fortunate to be. So, having good health without disease is a Bhagyam, is fortune. So, that's how we look at it. It's a wonderful way of looking at it. And again, there's a balance you see here between medicine and poison. It's actually Shushruta who gives this quote here to say that a drug is not understood properly is comparable to poison. Similarly, a drug, if not administered properly, is dangerous. Even poison is converted into medicine if prepared properly. Good medicine will become poison if improperly administered. This is one Sushruta says this. So you see a good balance between medicine and poison here, because most of the anti-venom serum, vaccines, all these are in a way poison that you introduce to the body. To sort of, it is a medicine, so that's way. Similarly, Charak also says the same thing. So you have to have a balance between the vishal and the medicine. So that's good health. That's how it comes out. So beautiful balance between the two. So it's not that Ashwini twins are just two images, but they speak about a concept of balance, of twinning, because it's not one without the other.
And it's very interesting. The word for poison is visham, and the word for a medicine is beshajam. So it's so beautiful, the way they have looked at it. I mean, the words themselves, they convey, they have a, kind of twinning opposite effect.
Yes.
And if you look at this, in the Tamil language, we have a very famous saying, Marunde unavu, unave marundu. Medicine is food, food is medicine.
Which means that if your food comprises of things which have got medicinal properties like these spices, then the food itself becomes a medicine. So it has a therapeutic value. It becomes a beshajam and prevents you from falling sick. So you can see that there has been in Ayurveda, you have preventive versus curative balance. And within curative also, you have a balance between what is poisonous, what is cure. And again, you come to it, you find a balance between food and medicine. So what do you look at as food? What do you look at as medicine? When does food become medicine and when does medicine become food? So it is all lying in the perspective and in the way in which you want to approach things. And that approach also fundamentally carries forward to crisis. So the essence of staying alive itself is, one hand, you prevent the crisis from happening, and if it does, you also build in capabilities to manage the crisis. And where do you give the focus? Where do you give the thrust? At what times do you give for what kinds of crisis and what kinds of approaches to manage the crisis? Because as we all know that the efforts and pains of having to undergo the crisis is much more than the pains that you have to put into prevent the crisis from happening. And that again was the essence of staying alive. So when you start looking at things with balance, then you kind of get a very good handle on being prepared from all fronts. So on the side of preventing crisis, the way we have been handling that aspect in Indian civilization is to align with nature, to be always aligned with nature, and to keep your proactive safeguards in place to prevent diseases from attacking you. And on the other hand, for managing the crisis, it doesn't mean that, okay, you just left it to prevention. We also built in proficiency. So we did have cures, we did have other methods, as we shall see, and not just proficiency. What's the point being proficient if you're not sufficient with what you have found out? So proficiency and sufficiency have to both go together. And for these two, when they are available, you need a good leadership to help you put them to good use. And that is what has helped the civilization stay alive. But then again, it comes, okay, so you have taken preventive steps, but what if a crisis does really hit you? Then where do you go? Kova this, where to from there? So then we start looking at things that we can relate to in today's times. We look at everybody in the world is now going into lockdowns. So how do we understand these lockdowns? This is a very interesting perspective. If you sit back and you look at crisis at large, then you find that fundamentally there are two kinds. One is man-made, one is natural. And the man-made, typically they arise in terms of health, not because nature is creating that problem for you. These viruses and bacteria are there all around. It is just that you haven't taken care of your body to be able to ward off that attack from that virus. you cannot, there are millions of them floating around in the air and the seas and everywhere. But you have lost the ability to protect yourself from their attacks. Also, you are doing things that kindle them to become more prevalent and virulent. So these, in a way, health issues are a kind of a man-made crisis. And wars and protests, of course, economy and pollution, these are all, we can attribute them to crises arising out of man's actions. Now, nature's actions, of course, are seasonal, sometimes excesses or failures like floods and droughts, or earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, volcanic eruptions, and also from the skies, meteors. Now, these are something much beyond our control. So how do we look at these two forms of threats? Now, when you see that it's a man-made crisis, the tendency and the approach that civilizations have taken to has been to insulate themselves. And how do you insulate? You just cut yourself off and isolate yourself.
I have a quick question. So you're going to refer to COVID-19 as a natural disaster or a man-made crisis? What is your view?
See, fundamentally, like I said, I think all health crises are man-made.
Okay.
Because you haven't taken care of yourself. These things they have, actually, if you see, they are, virus is not a living organism, but all the bacteria and everything else in nature, it has been part of nature. The virions are as much a part of nature and as many in number as everything else in nature. So they have been there all around. And they contain genetic material as well. And genetic material by nature has a propensity to replicate, to generate. That is why it is genetic. Generation, cells after cell is what causes generations. So they are very much a part of nature. It is that you have lost the ability to protect yourself from what they can do to you. And interestingly, if you take it more philosophically, I would say it is a kind of design in nature to keep mankind also in check. Today we say, the balance of tiger and cattle in a forest, there is a healthy ratio. It tells you that everything is in order. So I think to keep something in check, you always need something else. And this is the only check that you can have against mankind, that humans. What other checks can you have?
That's true.
Always been around.
That's true. Please proceed.
And you don't see them, doesn't mean they're not there.
That's true.
But you have not geared yourself well enough. So it's a failure on our part.
I'm sorry to have interrupted your flow. Please continue.
No, but that's a very, very nice question. And I think you can include it as part of the thing as well.
Yes, it is. My rude interruption has been included as part of the this hangout.
It is a perspective of India, because you have to let them also be.
Yes.
I mean, you can't fight their existence. You can't destroy them fully.
True.
But you can only take steps to protect yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
So looking at it, therefore, if you, all these kind of man-made threats, the way you can protect yourself is through insulation, and obviously means isolation in the forms of lockdowns or whatever you will. And natural disasters, when they strike you, they are going to really disturb the place where you are. So you have to really flee from there. And in that case, you can't afford to insulate and stay put in that same place. You can go inside your house, but the floodwaters will eventually, knock you down. So in that situation, you have to be open enough to be able to seek refuge outside your area as well. So again, you see that it comes down to being a group of people who know how to lock down themselves, but who also know how to open up when times of need are there. So again, you have to have a balance. You can't just build a wall around yourself and say that, I'm going to be a close community to survive. At times, you will have to be able to scale the wall and allow others to scale over too, and be open enough. So it's a balance between insulation and integration. And interestingly enough, if you see, ancient civilizations, they have survived quite a bit because they knew as to what are the aspects that should be used for integration versus insulation. So in insulation, it is self-sufficiency, discipline, wisdom, all of these local wisdom. When I say wisdom, in terms of local wisdom, because once you're insulated and cut off, then you have to rely on your own knowledge to be able to survive. So that is your traditional wisdom that comes into help there. But then again, when you have to integrate, you need to have everything that's an open mind, you need to be able to share, you need tolerance, and also at the same time, you need to be powerful enough that people would want you in the world. There has to be something indispensable that only you have, for which people will still need you and therefore are willing to help you surmount your crisis and stay alive for their sake.
And if you see, we are now in the midst of a lockdown. But if you see a lockdown, this is not, people think this is the first time in the long history of this land have we had a lockdown. No, we have had lockdowns many times. And the lockdowns can be different reasons. One, a lockdown could be due to a war. It can be due to epidemics like what we are having now, or it could be due to protests also. So let us look at some of the very interesting lockdowns we have had in history. One of the earliest lockdowns, recorded lockdowns in the Indian civilization is about the Govardhanagiri episode. This is what we're showing here. And this is a famous painting of Govardhanagiri. And the one on the top here is about what you have in the Brajbhumi. And here, the one on the bottom is at Mahapalipuram, Mamallapuram. So actually, the lockdown for the whole Brajbhumi was for 7 days. They had to take shelter here, and it was a 7-day lockdown recorded in history about 5,100 years back. Now, going on, it's very interesting, and similarly, going on, you see, through the history, we have had wars many times, sieges of forts, and there will be lockdowns for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, long sieges basically. And the interesting part we've seen all the forts in India is there's a very good water harvesting system. You can see here how the water from each rainfall is collected within the fort and saved there itself so that there's sufficient water within the fort. Yes, sir.
So what you are indicating by arrows there in the drawing is that it's some sort of like a rain catchment process that they had built in, right? Please continue.
So, yeah, it's a rain catchment thing. So the water is saved there itself within the fort so that for the population that lives within the fort, there's enough water, grains, everything. So for them to survive the lockdown. So it's well planned. So they knew this will happen in a fort or in a enclosed citadel town. So they planned for it. Similarly, if you look at the Kumbhalgarh fort, see this fort is famous for another thing. The walls of this fort is the second longest after the Great Wall of China.
I see.
The second longest wall in the world is at the Kumbhalgarh fort. Okay, so this is also designed in such a way that this whole community can live for long periods of time, totally locked down and live. So it was well planned.
And they've happened thousands of times.
And they happened many, many times. And across the land, you have had this successfully. Yes, sir.
So for viewers' interest, where is Kumbhalgarh fort located?
It's in Rajasthan.
Rajasthan. Please continue.
Rajasthan is the key point is the second largest wall after the Great Wall of China in the world.
Yeah, so actually if you look at the walls of the fort in this picture itself, you can see them, they are so thick, very, very thick walls as well.
Yes, about
not just long, but also thick enough.
10 foot, at least 10 foot or more thick.
Yes,
much
more than that. And all these forts had their own granaries, had their own markets, and right from everything they had. So going on to the next type of lockdown, if you look at Bandhs, organized lockdown, probably the earliest one in the modern India phase is when Mahatma Gandhi called for this Satyagraha against the Rowlatt Act. So that was the first time that you had a formal Bandh about 100 years back where he brought the nation to a standstill. So
like what exactly was the Rowlatt Act that they protested against? Was it something like curfew?
No. The Rowlatt Act was imposed by the British.
Yes. What is it?
And this it was actually against the freedom of press.
Freedom of press. Okay.
Press. It was about things to do with the freedom of press, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And when this was imposed, then Gandhiji resorted to a nationwide ban, a nationwide lockdown, and which got the name Band. And from then on, it's become a formal form of protest in India.
And actually, this took the British administration in India by surprise. Because if you see the film Gandhi, which I'm sure you would have seen, and most of our viewers have seen, there's a particular mention about the British then being totally surprised that a whole nation can just come to a standstill by one man's call, which is what happened then. And if you look at the case of Kashmir, because of the repeated separatist call and separatist movement, the whole state was actually in some sort of a semi-paralysis, semi-lockdown for 70 years. And fortunately, those laws have been removed so that the state can look forward to real prosperity by going forward. And incidentally, we have done an interview for P Gurus called Kashmir Puravasini, where we have dealt with
Yes.
months back.
Yes.
And we'll take another example now. There's specific lockdowns for the epidemics among the Vanavasi. In English, they are called tribals. Unfortunately, they should not be called tribals. In our opinion, tribals is a derogatory term. The more apt term would be Vanavasi. They are living in the Vana, Vasi. Those who live in Vana are Vanavasi. And in Arunachal Pradesh and northeast of India, about 40 years back, when they had an epidemic hit them, they had this practice of voluntarily sealing of their villages, their habitats from others coming in or people going out. So they had this very clearly, it's there in Arunachal Pradesh. It's now come to light because after 40 years, they have revived that practice again there, the Vanavasi there. Similarly, if you go to Uttarakhand, Ooty, in Western Tamil Nadu, I had the opportunity of speaking to the Toda tribals there in a program. They have a very clear practice that if any of their Toda Vanavasi come back from a grama or nagara, go into habitation and come back, they must, as per their practice, stay in a secluded hut outside their habitation in the forest for a day or two to ensure they don't bring any virus or infection from the grama into the Vana. So they have to live in isolation. So this is among the Vanavasi who you think are illiterate or who do not know good values of life. They had this practice. So for them, visiting a grama or nagara was infectious.
And when they came back, they had to quarantine themselves. Self-quarantine. And this was not just for the other members of the community, but this was also to protect the forest themselves. So they were very clear that they didn't bring back things that would contaminate the forest as well.
And
so again, therefore, if you see what matters in a lockdown, it is again the ability to balance, a balance between how self-sufficient you are to be able to withstand and go through the lockdown, meaning how much of capacity you have for your essentials like water, your food, your goods, your services. And it's so evident now because now every little suburb has to depend, people have to depend on facilities that are available just within the suburb there itself, and the kind of skills and knowledge, everything is contained now. And on the other hand, when you look at interdependency, then what are the things for which you can afford to be interdependent? And the word for interdependency is parasparashray. So parasparam, one another, mutual exchange. And shram means effort. So ashray is shelter. So how do you take mutual refuge or mutual dependence? And these were topics, these were areas such as knowledge share, technology sharing. If you look at ancient civilizations, bulk of the trade was not on essentials. It was mainly on niche luxury products and not really on the essentials. Every civilization knew they had to depend on their own local things. Now, imagine today in a place like Norway or a cold country, and where it has to undergo lockdown, and people have been trained just to have bananas for breakfast. What are they going to do? They have geared their system, assumed, to eating non-local, non-seasonal foods. And likewise in India, where you train yourself to eat non-local, non-seasonal, and then you have a lockdown. What are you going to do? So local, seasonal resources were the essence of staying alive by old ancient civilizations. And the word for self-sufficiency in Indian language is svavritti. It comes from the word root, for vrit, with meaning to abstain or uphold. Vrat, which is what we uphold, when we undergo a fast. Or vritra is the asura who is supposed to be, in Vedic parlance, he also denotes something that is cloud-like. So he's sticky, he holds, and in fact, even a report which holds the description of the event is called vrittant. So svavritti is to be able to hold yourself up and contain yourself, be contained. So that is self-sufficiency.
And look at this. What is essential in a lockdown period is how we use the time. And what better example than we can have than a pupa turning into a butterfly. It goes into self-lockdown for about 2-3 weeks and then comes out as a beautiful butterfly. Hibernates, it comes out. Like that, when lockdowns happen, it's essential that we use it to build our self-sufficiency so that we come out strong, we come out purposeful.
Because there are two aspects to a lockdown. One, you need strength to go through the lockdown, and you need similar or more strength to be able to come out of the lockdown as well. So after the lockdown, again, you need strength to build back that self-sufficiency for facing whatever calamities you're going to face later in life again, and to build back all that you have lost and regain, and have the revival. So the stimulus as well as the strength, again, after a lockdown is equally needed. Therefore, you have to use this period of lockdown in a very purposeful manner.
So self-sufficiency is the substrata strength that we should have. That's essential in good times and in difficult times. And let's look at this. When you had these difficult times, there are 3 important people who matter. What we call as PMG, the 3 leaders.
In fact, all along Indian text, Indian literature, we will find that the civilization, there are 3 kinds of leaders who have been spoken about. At all times, you find the legend speaking about 3 different kinds of leaders. One is called, we have just coined this acronym PMG, because one is the Prajapati, one is a Manu, and one is a Guru. And they had certain characteristic role to play, and they were very different. It was not that every leader was a Prajapati or every leader was a Manu. When there was a Prajapati, there was also a Manu, there were also Gurus. So these 3 distinct role plays have always been there through the civilization across millennia, and across all eras you will find that these kind of leaders have been there.
So who is a Prajapati? Praja is people. The one who leads his people through these difficult times is a Prajapati. Who is a Manu? Is more than that. One who leads a whole mankind. Because the word man, human, women, Manushya all come from the word Manu.
It in turn comes from the word man.
Mind.
So human and the mind are very closely interconnected. It's one of the very characteristic traits of human beings, and that forms a root for man, human, Manu, Manushya.
And here, third is we have the Guru. One who, the word Guru obviously comes from the word Guru means to attract. Guru, and also uplifts you in the role of Dharma as to how you need to live. So that is an important aspect. So now let's look at Prajapati. There have been different Prajapatis as the drawing shows here. There are On the right hand side, we've got 3 see, charts. So we have different Prajapatis. At different times, the civilization has had multiple Prajapatis. And one who leads this population is a Prajapati. And one among the most famous that we speak in the Indian legends of Prajapati is Daksha. Because it is from this word, from his name Daksha. Okay, you have his daughter as Dakshayani, who went on to become Parvati, Shiva's consort. But the key point here is the word Daksha has led to the English word dexterity, dexterous, ambidextrous. So it's a skilled. So one who is skilled to lead his people is a Daksha.
And leads the people towards skills and occupations needed for living. So he is one who helps build a civilization.
And if you look at the third image that we have, it's called Prithu. Prithu is one who made the earth livable. That's why for earth you have the Indian term Prithvi. Prithu is one who made it livable. So each of them have led the world, led the people at different times in different ways.
And when Prithu made the world earth livable, actually it is all about how he taught people about sustainably utilizing the resources of the earth. So if you look at Prithu's legend, it is the first half will be all about how earth was being exploited, and it led to various situations. And subsequently, it was Prithu who taught people how to use the earth's resources in a sustainable manner.
That's what it is all about. So that's what, how to harness the earth's resources in a sustainable manner is what Prithu. So that's why you have the word Prithvi for earth. Now going on to Manu, there have been many Manus across the world. You got Menes in Egypt, then Mosa, Moshe, Musa, Noah. So across the world, you've got many Manus you have had. People who have led the time at the times of disaster. So Prajapati is one who looks at his Praja. Manu is at a much larger scale who looks at mankind, humanity as a whole. And he leads the people from one crisis on to and then shows them the next level path. So that's a much bigger thing. And he sets framework for the whole society as a whole. That's what we look at as Manu. And there's an interesting thought here in Manu. In time scales of India, you have a term called Manvantara. The word Manvantara.
Vaivasvata Manvantare, I remember that.
Yes,
from our puja. Yes.
So that Vaivasvata is what the Manvantara that we are currently living in. What does the word Manvantara mean? Antara means the interim, intervening period. Antar, gap. So the gap between two Manu is a Manvantara. So it's not just a particular time frame of say 10,000 years or 20,000 years, 50,000 years, but any two issues when two Manus come up to lead the world is a Manvantara. So it's a time that a society goes through in its life. So that is the scope of a Manu and Manvantara here. And we have had many Manvantara. Of course, here in the column we show about the current Manvantara that we live in. That's in the astronomical scale.